consent items, and the first consent item is with respect to staff report CEO 18-37, the lame duck period, and that was pulled by the mayor. So I'll give her the floor first. Your microphone, please.
My understanding is that bylaw 28-12 delegates authority to the CAO during lame duck for expenditures greater than $50,000. That's correct, yes?
Yes, that's correct.
In that case, could you explain, just for the council, because we're new, how expenditures under $50,000 are handled?
Right. I'm going to let the clerk, it seems like he's got the answer with respect to the procedure, okay?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was an amending bylaw to include, passed by the council previous to the lame duck, to allow amounts under $50,000 as well.
So that bylaw applies only through the lame duck period, or is still in play today?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it was a directly amending bylaw to this bylaw, to the lame duck bylaw.
To
so
allow
I can circulate it to all of council.
And do you know approximately the date that that amendment to that bylaw was created?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it would have been before lame duck, so it would have been after the passage of this bylaw and before, in between when this bylaw was passed and before July 13th.
Okay, thanks. Another question, under the bylaw itself, 3B, it speaks to the authority to hire or remove any officer from or to employment within Norfolk County. Could you explain how that would be different than your normal course of business as CAO?
As a practical matter, there isn't a difference on a day-to-day basis. Employment decisions with regards to staff do typically get made in my office with consultation of other senior leadership. The difference in this instance was really, I would submit to a protective measure so as to remove any doubt under the case law for terminations or hirings and the like. When in a lame duck period, of course, the elected officials are not capable of making those decisions. So we take the language from the statute and applied it over to sort of make doubly sure, if you will.
So would it be fair to assume then, since that was included in that bylaw, that generally if a senior level member of staff or a long-time employee was terminated, that council would be consulted, or should we assume that we would not?
No, Norfolk County operates within the municipal norm, which is to say employment decisions are, save and except the employment of the chief administrative officer,
okay, are
made at the staff level.
Okay, and
I'm going to ask the human resources personnel here to chime in on that one, okay?
Sure.
Mr. Yakov, Sashenko? It blanked there. There you go.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what else I could add to the CAO's response to that question.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And sorry, just one final question, Mr. Cribbs. Just as prior to the 2014-2018 Council's final meeting on September 25th, reports were brought forward to inform Council of the CAO's intent to exercise his delegated authority. The second report, the overall responsible operator report, could you just inform Council here generally what that report speaks to?
Historically, Norfolk County had 4 staff members capable of conducting the ORO responsibilities, overall responsible operator with respect to the water and wastewater systems. pursuant to the relevant legislation, you have to have people with that 3 levels of accreditation. You have to have the 3rd level of accreditation to be able to make what in layman's terms are emergency decisions with respect to repair and operation of the water supply system so as to keep the water safe and potable. Due to a combination of human resource factors which were presented in closed session, Norfolk County has found itself in a position to only have one member of the management team with that accreditation, and one person is not capable of being on call 24/7 for 5 separate water supply systems. Accordingly, we advised council that the appropriate course of action to meet the statutory requirements would be to proceed with a third party providing the service. Ultimately, after a discussion in closed session, council came out and had a public vote and instructed staff to enter into a contract with Aqua, the Ontario Clean Water Agency. That happened back in September, and said contract was entered into.
Okay, so would we be able to, if we have no staff members, with the exception of one, that are currently qualified to hold this position, I'm going to assume that it is possible to train a current member of staff to be able to, or current members of staff? Or is the training so onerous that it requires being contracted out?
My understanding, and Mr. Baird's welcome to contradict me if I am incorrect, but it takes actually, you need thousands of hours of experience operating the system before you qualify for the 3rd level. It's much like becoming a master trades person in any of the sort of red seal trades. This would be my analogy. And in any event, we've had some inability to attract, to successfully hire individuals into our management ranks who have that skill set. There shall be a report roughly on this topic coming to council next week, if that helps. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baird, I might direct a question to you then. Is that your position, that we do not have anybody, with the exception of one manager, holding that ability to hold an ORO position within Norfolk County?
Through Councillor Cumbus, Mayor Chop, we do have one management member that meets those qualifications, and we do have 6 or 7 employees, unionized employees, that also meet that requirement. Okay. And that's the information we hope to bring forward. Thank you.
Excellent. And just one final question in regards, it says on page 8 that there was a closed session report and any cost for 2018 will be offset by surplus variances. Could you just explain that for me?
Mr. Chairman, to Mayor Chop, page 8, I'm sorry, in which document?
Page 8 of the lame duck report, so page 8 of the agenda.
It's the chart there, Chris.
Okay, that's right.
And second block from the bottom of that chart.
My recollection of that, without going back into the details, we did have, we were unsuccessful in recruiting an individual to fulfill those duties, so that position remained vacant. So we were able to carry savings that were directly used to offset the cost of this ORO contract for November and December of this year.
Sorry, we had a savings?
We were unable to hire an employee to fulfill those duties, so the resultant salaries and benefits were available to help offset the cost of going to a third-party contractor to provide that service for November and December of this year.
Okay, I'm just going to challenge you on that a little bit from the perspective that, would it be correct to say that in other municipalities, typically it's an existing employee with the qualifications that performs the ORO responsibilities for an added remuneration component to his or her salary?
Through Chair Columbus, other municipalities do a combination thereof. Sometimes they have their management staff fulfill those ORO duties. Some provide that through their unionized staff, and others rely on ORO duties through a third-party contractor. We have Veolia Water that looks after our wastewater treatment plants, and that organization provides ORO duties for the wastewater side of our operation. So we have there's a blend, and all have pros and cons, and we intend to bring some information before council so that you can make a decision with respect to moving forward in 2019.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything further with respect to this report? No? Okay, I need a mover and a seconder to, how should we read that? To receive this report for information. Okay, that report, CAO 1837, respecting the lame duck period, use of delegated authority, be received as information. Mover and a seconder, Rabbits and Michelle. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And now we'll move the other deferred consent item, which was the staff memo on Road 45 Bridge. I take it this is your department, Chris, so I'll ask you to chime in on this right now.
Chair Columbus, if maybe there's a specific question that council or Mayor Chop may like to raise, so I could respond to that first to have a dialogue.
Okay, Mayor Chop, you pulled this, so we'll give you the first opportunity.
Okay. First question, page 29 of the agenda. The report says to permanently close Concession A Bridge and remove the structure, and yet it's my understanding that some residents have been told that the bridge will now be rebuilt. Could you please provide some background on this?
Sure. Through the chair, this report is just attached as a reference specifically to the Road 45 bridge. This was presented back in November of 2017. At the time, the class environmental assessment that was completed made preferred solution recommendations that Concession A bridge be closed. It was the wish and direction of the former council that bridge would indeed proceed through a class environmental assessment with the intention of it being replaced. So this report, or the document that's attached, is actually older. There are some resolutions that are newer, and staff continue to work on that Class EA with designs coming forward that would see that project go to tender for replacement.
So just, again, so we get a little bit of knowledge here as a council, could you sort of explain the environmental assessment process and how, obviously we can come to a different solution than the first environmental assessment said that it should be closed, and now now there's a recommendation that we move forward and build a bridge. So clearly that's not the end of the story then. What comes out of an EA assessment?
Okay, through the chair, the class environmental assessment process is well adopted and endorsed across the province. It is something that requires, we need a lot more time tonight for me to try to explain it. Certainly I have colleagues on staff that are experts in that area, but essentially it looks at a problem. We use this example. There's a bridge that's closed, and in order to look at different options, should it stay closed, should it be removed, should it be remediated, should it be replaced? All the different options are looked at. The public is invited to participate in that process, and it looks at all the different attributes that generate a number of recommendations. In this particular case, the preferred solution because of cost, and in this particular case, I think there were less than 100 vehicles a day that actually used that bridge. That was the recommendation through the Class EA. It's always council's decision whether to accept that or accept an alternate solution, which would perhaps lead to, as it did in this case, working towards the replacement.
Okay, so that's what I was driving at. So the EA is simply a recommendation then?
Correct.
So any changes, for example, with the County Road 45 bridge and or the Side Lot 22 bridge, any changes to those structures that have been recommended under the EA would not trigger a new EA?
No, in the case of the Road 45 bridge, which was the intent of this attachment to go with that covering memo, the recommendation through the Class EA suggested that that bridge be indeed replaced with a two-lane structure. And I know there's been some discussion in the local community about maybe not going that way. So this council will have that decision what to do. But in the currently, the Class A was done. We have these results, and that's furthering the project right now through the design and tendering stage.
So if we are in the design and tendering stage, what would be the process then, given that these are two both low-volume roads of directing Public Works to investigate the construction of a prefab one-lane structure? It's my understanding that prefab structures have the potential to save an enormous amount of money. It's also my understanding that we have had no complaints with the single-lane structures since their construction and/or accidents. They, in fact, have numerous benefits for traffic calming effects. Once you add a two-lane structure to an existing road, the potential to increase the traffic on that road is significant. So I'm just wondering what would be your recommendations to look at alternative options here moving forward?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend to this council that you request staff to bring the class environmental assessment as it relates to the Road 45 bridge back to you, so you've got all the options available. And at that point, you know, we're still a ways away in a design, tender, all this. And if this council decides that they would like staff to go to tender and perhaps provide or obtain two options, one for the two-lane structure, which is currently the direction, but if there is a desire to also look at an option for a single lane, perhaps there's an opportunity rather to tender those at the same time. When those bids come back, you would be able to make that decision. Is one cheaper? Are they the same price? Are there pros and cons for either design? But you will make that decision when those bids come forward. But as it sits presently, we're proceeding to design a two-lane bridge. So again, if I could provide that information, it would help frame a bit of context for it. But that option is certainly there. We haven't left the barn, as you will.
If there's no other questions, I would like to make a recommendation.
Okay, no, I've got questions.
Yep.
Councillor Geison's next.
Well, I guess looking on page 27, they were talking about putting $100,000 into fixing the Bailey Bridge, and I'm totally against that. I can tell you, yes, there are some people in that area that wanted to have a covered bridge, and I'm not sure who you were talking to there, but anyway, theoretically, the farmers have to go around probably, I'm going to say 6-7 miles, or if not, to get their grain out to the Cortland and down to wherever it has to go. Certainly, whatever you're going to build, if it's a one, make it solid enough that those trucks and everything can get through. That's one thing. To me, we have been working and trying to get that bridge for a long, long time, as far as I'm concerned. We have closed a lot of bridge, whether it's this county that will do it, or this council, or others as well. To me, the whole idea was this, that 45 ends now at 59 Highway, but the idea was to continue that further to come, so it would come almost here to Simcoe, I guess. So that was the whole idea behind it when it was the region, I guess, that was there. So theoretically, I would love to see that bridge, a two-road bridge, yes. We don't get a whole lot in that end of the county and everything like that. So this is something that I think is a good thing for our community, or for my community, I guess, in the area. So theoretically, council can do whatever it ends up doing, and that's fine. But I would think that whatever you do, the very least you should do is a bridge, a one-way bridge, and I don't know whether that'll cause accidents or not. I'm not 100% certain, but I have been fighting this for a long, long time, and I thought somewhere we had gotten somewhere, but I'm not sure where we're going to end up. So maybe we need to look at what's all available and everything like that and go from there. Like I said, this is basically something that most of the people in that area do want a double bridge. There's a few people there that say no.
And
Well-
your Counselor, guys, you're talking about the Road 45 bridge, right?
The 45 bridge, yes.
Yeah. Okay, I thought I saw a hand on the left side here. No? Okay. Counselor Shelley, this is in your, no, I think you're just south of that. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this is a question for staff. Her worship mentioned something about the possibility that a two-lane bridge would create additional traffic. Do we have any projections about how much additional traffic a two-lane bridge might create?
We'll send that to.
Through the chair, Councillor Michele, no, I would just be pulling numbers from the air. Whether it may generate more traffic because it will be a more convenient route with a wider, newer bridge. It's still susceptible to flooding on both of the abutment approaches, just because of the nature of the Big Creek Valley. So it may not be a preferred route, during winter or wet seasons, but as was mentioned by many people that use that road or take that route, it's very scenic, and it is a route east and west into Norfolk County, into Elgin, and so on. It's very hard to predict if that bridge would generate more traffic, perhaps more locally, but I don't really have those figures.
Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Huffman.
So my question is, how long then, in years, has this bridge been a single-lane bridge?
Okay, through the chair, I'll just draw your attention to page 27. So our indication here is that the former structure was replaced with the Bailey Bridge. Bailey Bridge is a temporary metal structure. They're really designed just for temporary use. However, it's been in place since 1992. It has been repaired numerous occasions, and it has finally come forward through the capital budget. Its time is due. It's well past due. And just last Monday, staff became aware of damage that was inflicted to that bridge that made it unsafe to travel on. Mm-hmm. So that's why the bridge is now closed to vehicular traffic. Our engineers have looked at it, and we've determined that in order to fix it, to reopen it, we're looking at about $100,000. And if this bridge is going to be replaced this time next year, and certainly be taken out of service as early as March or April, spending $100,000 now for only a month or two for it being open is money wasted. So our recommendation is we'll keep that closed. It is an inconvenience. First responders are well aware of it, and the local residents. But knowing that we're going to have a new bridge, be it a one-lane bridge or a two-lane bridge, council will make that decision, but it will be replaced. It's funded, and it's planned to be done.
Okay, but my question is, prior to 1992 then, there was nothing there?
No, there was a bridge there through the chair before that had failed and was replaced with this structure. This actually came from the Port Rowan area, and it was used as a temporary bridge structure there. So it has made its rounds, it's paid for itself more than once, quite clearly.
And it was a single-lane bridge prior to. That's what I'm trying to establish. Is
yes,
that
I'm sorry.
How long, historically then, in Norfolk County, has Bailey Bridge been a single-lane bridge?
Since its inception, it's
Thank
designed
you.
as one,
Okay.
one lane only.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion? Yes. Your microphone.
Just hopefully, perhaps you could address some of the concerns that Mr. Geisens had in terms of load requirements and so on. These new prefab construction bridges, to the best of my knowledge, are capable of carrying equal or greater even load than traditional bridges. They also, one of the other concerns that I've heard is that they don't have the same lifespan as a traditional bridge, and to the best of my knowledge, again, they are able to meet those lifespans of concrete bridges and or possibly exceed them, particularly in areas that are subject to water flow, such as this one. So I'm just wondering if you might be able to speak on those points for Mr. Geisens.
Certainly. Through the chair, what you're referring to is those pre-engineered or engineered spans. They are suitable, proven alternatives. I think Councillor Geisens, not to put words in his mouth, but a lot of it has to do, the two questions are the design load What are some of the larger vehicles? So fire apparatus, recycle trucks, snow plows, those what we'd be designing for. We do know that there's large transport haulers that use that bridge that are likely in excess of the weight restrictions on there. But it would be the width as well. So during harvest time, or some of the farm implements that are used in current day are quite wide. And just how wide of a bridge do we need to do? If a 2-lane bridge isn't sufficient for some of this, I'm not sure how they'd get around. So these would all be the things that we would look at. What would be the ideal design width, design load, and lifespan is only as good as your maintenance. So.
Okay. Sorry, one last question for Mr. Baird. It's come to my attention that through the MTO, they in fact amended their requirements or their rules such that they felt that it was becoming apparent that bridges with low traffic volumes, the requirements were in fact becoming too stringent, and they felt that application of the requirements, of the past requirements to bridges on low volume roads would provide an opportunity for savings on structures in these situations, as well as maintaining a certain heritage aspect to these areas. Would that be fair to say then that the MTO has adopted their rules over the years to continue to allow 1-lane bridges to stand?
Through the chair, I am familiar with what you're referring to. I don't have all the facts to state competently. I'm certainly not a professional engineer, but those would be matters that we would take into consideration. We would obviously never recommend something to you that would not be endorsed by the MTO, albeit even as a lesser level than, say, a Highway 401 bridge or something like that. There are clearly different alternatives, but that would be subject to proper design.
Okay. So there is a staff recommendation in the report. Does anybody wish to speak to that, or no? Yes, Mayor Roberts?
I would like
Mayor,
to make...
Your chop, sorry.
I would like to make a new recommendation that council send staff back for options and costs of the construction of a prefab 1-lane structure, and that any work on the design and/or engineering of the current 2-lane structure be suspended until options for a prefabricated structure have been presented to council.
Is there any threat that this could delay the process? I'm just wondering about that. Do you have any concern about that?
What my argument on that side, I think we have a tremendous opportunity here, and tourism is a huge component of Norfolk County. People travel all over, believe it or not, to go to 1-lane bridges. They are a rare thing anymore. I've seen some of the drawings that I'm happy to provide council, and I think they are incredibly charming. I think the argument that a 2-lane structure is safer does not take into account the increased degradation and safety on the road, as we see an increased amount of traffic down that particular road. And I think that engineering-wise, we have the opportunity for a huge cost savings here. And given our financial situation in Norfolk County, I think it is prudent of this new council to investigate any modern solutions that have the potential to reduce costs and allow us to direct those funds to other projects that also need attention in Norfolk.
Okay, can I ask you to repeat your motion slowly so the mayor can?
And I have
so
the copy for
clerk
you,
can pick it
if
up.
you'd like. Somewhere.
Can we get a timeline on that, when that should be coming back, Madam Mayor?
I would direct that to Mr. Baird to let me know how much time he needs.
Through the chair, I don't see it specifically as a timeline follow-up report. I think you've made, through your motion, you've made a request of staff to look at 2 designs. So that will add a little bit more in terms of we have to design 2 different structures. And
So I would argue with the prefab, I've actually made some phone calls already, and with the prefab construction, we know that the bridge is already completed, it would be put into place, so it would be a matter simply of designing the, a cost analysis, shall we say, of whatever curbs or gutters or so on need to be attached to that. The construction of the bridge itself has already been completed, so I don't see that as being such an onerous process.
The two options here is to look at both designs and get construction estimates. And then the true test is when you go to tender and find out what sort of bids you get on that. But certainly we could get construction estimates for the two options and then seek council's direction at that point.
My concern is that we're spending a significant amount of funds, to my knowledge, on the current design of a two-lane structure. And if this is not the direction of new council, then it would be money wasted at this point. So I'm just wondering if we would not be able to get an estimate of both structures before the design process itself has been completed.
Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
I'll interpret that, I'll take that as direction that we will prepare two construction estimates and bring those back to council for further directions prior to going to final design and tender. That would.
Okay, just to clarify, two construction, one's for a two-lane and one's for a one-lane?
Correct.
And are they portable bridges or built-in-place bridges?
One would be your conventional two-lane construction,
Okay,
and the alternate would be a prefabricated one-lane structure.
okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the motion specifically says that the staff can't look at they have to suspend the two-lane one. That's what the motion specifically reads.
Right. Can you read the motion again, Mr. Clerk?
I'm happy to amend the motion
Okay.
to suit
That would
Mr.
that would be a
Barrett's.
big
That's-
help because we've kind of been moving along here. So if you could amend the motion, and also, it's not referred which bridge this is. It should be, I think, the Road 45 bridge, right? It should be stated in the motion.
Well, prior to getting to that point, then, has work begun on the sidewalk Road 22 bridge?
Through the chair, I'd have to double check and confirm with council tomorrow after speaking with Mr. Houghton, our manager of engineering.
So my motion would apply to both if construction has begun on Side Lot Road 22, as well as, well, really all three, as well as concession A. But we'll put the focus right now on County Road 45, since I believe that's the one that's moving ahead first. So I would amend the motion to read that council send staff back for options and costs of the construction of a two-lane Class A bridge and a prefab one-lane structure, and that any work on the design of the current two-lane structure be suspended until the options have been presented to council.
Is it understood, Mr. Barrett? Okay, and that's with respect to Road 45 bridge?
To my knowledge, the design has only begun on County Road 45. I would bring this forward again at our next council meeting if Mr. Baer discovers that the design work has also begun on the other two bridges.
Okay. Discussion with respect to the mayor's motion, recommendation, I should say. See any? Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Huffman seconds it. Call the vote. Is it all understood, Mr. Baird? What's requested?
It's understood, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call the vote. Those in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? One opposed. That's carried. Thank you. And now, we've done the consent items. We will move to staff report CAO 18-38 on page 53, retail sales of recreational cannabis. Go ahead, Mr. Griselle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, student members, sorry about we missed the agenda to the attachments to this report, and they've been circulated, so they're on your desk, and they were emailed yesterday.
Your microphone.
All right.
There you go.
Firstly, sorry to committee members. We missed 2 attachments to this report, and they've been circulated. They're on your blotters, and they were emailed to you earlier today. The obvious joke with this report is that it's a joint report, so I'm going to start off the presentation, and then I'm going to pass it to the left for Matt and Nicholas to take over. Joking aside, though, it's important to highlight that Norfolk County is at the forefront in terms of work and research on the issue of cannabis legalization. Much larger municipalities are not close to us in the amount of thought and work done on this portfolio. As a result, we're identifying issues and challenges that aren't even on the radar yet for other areas. This is an issue where staff from all areas of the corporation have worked together on a rapidly evolving issue to provide a very high level of analysis for council. So although the issue of cannabis is still contentious for some people, it's important to, prior to getting into those aspects, to take some time to highlight the work of staff and the accomplishments on this file. Specifically, staff who have a right to be proud are Mr. Vaughn and Mr. Loeb on this file. Staff are recommending allowing retail sales of cannabis in Norfolk County. This can be achieved through taking no action, as the opting in option is a current default position. This may seem weird, as there was a motion from the outgoing council to not approve retail sales. That motion, however, was made just days before the draft legislation was released. When the draft of the Cannabis License Act 2018 was released, staff quickly realized that for a council motion to be applicable, it would have to be passed after the enactment date of that law. So as a result, there's been no decision made by council to date in respect to retail sales. As you can see in the report, there are numerous reasons why allowing retail sales could be of benefit to the county. Everything from potential economic development to the fact that if we don't allow it, we will miss out on $76,000 in provincial funding. One aspect to highlight is how disappointing the province's approach has been in respect to cannabis. Municipalities have been told numerous times we would have the tools to regulate cannabis, but in reality, existing tools were specifically removed. We cannot apply business licensing without regulating all retail businesses in the county, and Matt will talk to you respecting the removal of our ability to zone for cannabis retail sales. It's fair to relay that the province rushed this legislation through and paid really no heed to the comments from AMO or municipal stakeholders. So the situation is not ideal. However, staff are recommending that Norfolk County doesn't cut off our noses to spite our faces. Even with the less than desirable system established by the province, retail sales make sense. And I don't know if Mr. Loeb, you have anything to add, or Mr. Vaughn?
Who's going to start this one off? Mr. Loeb? Mr. Vaughn?
There we are. Thank you, Mr. Slenchenkov. I just wanted to correct something that's in the report. When I made my contributions to the report, it's related to the smoking bylaw section. So the report currently states that the Municipal Act only provides the municipalities with the power to regulate tobacco because Section 115 specifically says tobacco. Last week on Thursday, December the 5th, I suppose that is? No, 6th. The province actually passed Bill 57, and tucked away at Schedule 27 of Bill 57 is an amendment to the Municipal Act Section 115 to add the word cannabis. The result of that is you can largely ignore the section in the report that relates to the outdoor spaces smoking bylaw for Norfolk County. The conclusion I would sort of leave you with on that is as soon as royal proclamation occurs from Bill 57, the outdoor spaces smoking bylaw will just snap into normal enforcement like any other bylaw the way it was originally intended when it was passed. So if council wishes to address that bylaw, it would just be addressing it in its general nature. The comments in the report no longer apply the way they're written. So I just wanted to clarify that before we move to discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Vaughn, are you prepared to speak to this report?
Yes, just a couple things to add. So one of the elements that has occurred as a result of the AGO taking over the licensing of the cannabis retail stores is that in their review of the licenses that will be applied for, there is not going to be any consultation with municipalities directly. What they are going to require is that the applicant post a notice in the window of the building in which they would like to have the store. And in addition to that, we will have 15 days, calendar days, to comment on a little advert on their website, webpage unknown at this point, but staff are taking on the responsibility of reviewing the AGCO website on a daily basis once licenses do start coming in, so that we know if and where the license will be applied for. One of the issues that may occur is that although we can't specifically regulate or zone for cannabis retail stores, we do have zoning provisions for regular retail uses. So one of our concerns is that a cannabis store may occur in a zone which does not permit retail sales, such as a residential zone or something like that. So we will be keeping an eye on those licenses as they come up on the AGCO website, and we will be commenting for the municipality in regards to the location of those sites, in regards to proximity to schools, and also in regards to zoning conformity. And in addition to that, I should also just speak to the sort of the general nature of cannabis retail sales. It is very different from what we have done so far in our zoning bylaw in regards to production and processing. These are two very different things. While we don't have the ability to necessarily control where the retail stores go, we have taken a lot of steps and have put a great deal of effort into developing policy for the production and processing of cannabis. That has been in place since March of this year, and it is working very effectively. And I'd like to toot our own horn and say that we receive phone calls from other municipalities almost on a daily basis asking us about our policy and whether they can use it. So what I would like to see in the future, and I do like to think ahead with this stuff quite often, is it would be nice to have the province adopt these policies as well, so that across the province everyone's playing by the same rules. But we'll see how that goes in the future.
Thank you. So, Matt, you've done a great job on this cannabis file for quite some time. You ready for some questions?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Councillor Taylor.
Is anything currently stopping individuals that wish to retail marijuana from starting the application process? Do they have to wait for our opting in, or can they start the process?
It's a good question. So they will not process an application for the actual retail store until the AGCO knows whether or not the municipality is going to opt in or not, or sorry, opt out or not, I should say. What they will do at first is, see, there's 3 levels of the licensing that has to occur. There's a license for the owner, there's a license for the manager of the store, and then there's a license for the actual physical location of the store itself. So what they'll likely do at the beginning is review the licenses for the individual owners, and that could be a franchise kind of setup, and then they'll do the review of the managers, and then they'll save the store location at the end. And just because we won't know until they won't know until January whether or not we're going to opt out.
Can one person hold that license for all 3 fields? If someone owns the store, manages the store, and the property is theirs?
Through the chair, I believe they can, although it may be a bit unorthodox. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, you done? Okay. Councillor Huffman.
Okay, I have a question. The one thing I'm not clear on, because obviously this is why you were employed by the planning department, because you're an expert in this area. So what I don't understand is that we're saying that we can't say where the retail places are going to be? Like that, we're not allowed to?
Through the chair, we don't have the ability to regulate where they go. We have the option, as everyone as part of the public has, to comment on a license if it's applied for and when it's put up for public review. But besides that, we don't have any special privileges or commenting or authority to say where it goes or where it doesn't go.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, because obviously I get we don't want to be people zoning, right? And we're not going to, obviously people who are going to consume cannabis legally, it's 19 and over and they're adults and we don't need to be Big Brother. But I guess what I'm looking at is in terms of more of a vision for Norfolk County and how we introduce, if we choose to move forward, how we introduce retail cannabis sales in Norfolk County. So my vision, I'm speaking for myself, would not be that current multi-use convenience store would be selling cannabis and that you go, I don't know, like behind a curtain or, that type of thing. Is that, when you look at going to, I understand people are going to apply and get a license, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be a connoisseur of cannabis. So my expectation for how we would want to introduce it and to be a leader in this field in Norfolk County would be to have specific, almost like standalone cafes or, people who are able to provide knowledgeable information regarding purchases and things like that. That's the vision I see. So are you saying that our hands would kind of be tied with being able to move forward with that vision?
Through the chair, I'll try to answer.
Sorry for rambling.
No, that's okay. You've actually brought up a lot of interesting points that I would like to speak to. So part of the license requirements is that the store has to be in a standalone store, so it cannot be a store within a store. So what you won't see is a cannabis retail store in an existing store that sells other things. For instance, like a kiosk in a building or something like that. It has to be a standalone store, and what they sell in that store is prescribed by the AGCO. In terms of its location and proximity to schools, that's another stipulation they have. So similar to LCBOs, it's required to be 150 meters from a school, from school property. So it's not that far, but it's something at least. And then in terms of training, the store managers and employees, the AGCO is presently working on a training module similar to what the province uses for alcohol sales. So we have a smart serve training type of use for alcohol. It'll be similar, or they may amend it to have it for both. But I expect all of the employees at these stores will be trained in some way to identify things like different strains, safety precautions, and those sorts of things. It would be nice if that training did identify those things, because I imagine there will be some first-time users who need that education. So yeah, there are some things that are coming out. And I expect the process and the training and all those things are going to be a moving target between now and April. April is the time that right now anyway, that the retail stores are going to start. But it is a moving target, it seems. So we're trying our best to sort of keep up with it.
Okay, so I guess where some of my confusion came was when you were stating that the store would have to post something in the window. So you're talking, okay, so that's where I was getting confused. And so we're already going to have stores that are already selling other things and they're going to post in their window. These are the posting in the window of the standalone store. Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Martin.
A couple questions. First of all, I thought that this was a very helpful report, and I specifically like the discussion points regarding tourism and setting the tone in the market, in the industry, and I think that is something that really needs to be discussed here in Norfolk County, because there's an option to do things well and maybe change around some of our communities. So I thought that was interesting points. You mentioned that you will have a staff member in the planning department checking the website for these. Okay, who do I forward my emails to? Okay, and then and I gather that this is a concern for you as well, but should that business listing be posted and it's not matching up zoning-wise, then protocol?
Through the chair, it is unknown at this point, and I think there needs to be some more conversation between staff and county solicitor about what our steps would be if the license is given out at a location that doesn't jive with our zoning bylaw. So we'll see what we can do. At this point, I don't believe we can do anything. We can comment to the AGCO and let them know that the location does not conform with our zoning, but that might be about it.
So that's something you're already prepared to do and keep a watchful eye on that.
Yeah, and in fact, we've actually we've developed a letter already that we can send to the AGCO that outlines conformity and our comments and that sort of thing. So it is something that we're thinking about. And to speak also to your point about the tourism, Norfolk has a very unique opportunity because of our prominent agricultural economy, where we currently have several licensed producers in our agricultural area, and there are quite a few in the hopper. So I expect the landscape is going to continue to change, and as part of the licensing process, all of the licensed producers are going to be are automatically being given a retail license. So right now that's not great because it doesn't conform with our bylaws. So we've got a little work to do between now and the spring to bring our zoning bylaw up to date with our on-farm diversified use policy, which is something that staff will be bringing forward in the future. But where I'm thinking ahead is similar to the breweries in the agricultural area, or maybe the wineries in the agricultural area. We could use this as a beneficial thing and create a bit of a tourism market, but it's something that we're just talking about right now.
Okay, Councilor Rabbit.
My question for you, Matt, is a little loaded, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm just going to do a little reading. I received an email yesterday, we all did, from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario regarding developing a municipal cannabis policy statement or a strategy. During council transition, AMO sent this out to senior staff, and it covers all the information that would be helpful in preparing reports to councils, whether to opt in or out of allowing retail cannabis sales. In this email, it made reference to a document, a draft municipal cannabis policy statement template. This template is designed to help municipal governments that may wish to allow recreational cannabis retail sales, identifying sensitive areas, and to better guide retail outlet locations. The template is based upon the public interest definition in the Ontario recreational cannabis regulations, where stores are allowed. It can also help staff provide comments to AGCO, Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. Under Ontario's recreational cannabis policy, private cannabis retail stores will be approved to sell as of April 1st, 2019. We know this to be true. We've got a deadline approaching of January 22nd, 2019 to be making a decision. My question to you, Matt, is this policy template that's been provided to us, we found out about it yesterday, I assume staff have known about this for some time, was this template used to either craft our policy regarding opting in and how we opt in, and was this template used in any way, shape, or form to craft those questions that we will be posing to the AGCO?
Through the chair, I'm not aware that we are using the template, and maybe I'll just speak to that template a little bit. Like, it was nice of AMO to provide that. I think it will help in providing AGCO with a consistent message from all of the municipalities in Ontario. I don't know what the province will do with it when they get it, but at least it provides a general framework for responding. Maybe I'll ask Andy if it's something we'll consider
Through you, Mr.
Clerk?
Chair. Yeah, I think the policy template is interesting, but ultimately it comes from a place where AMO wasn't really heeded by the province, so they want to still have input with the AGCO process. The biggest takeaway I got from it was just sending AGCO consistent comments on any license application that we do, which Matt already has kind of well underway. We got the template the same time as you did, so we weren't aware of it in advance, but I think it is something that a lot of municipalities that aren't as far along as us on this issue would really have get a lot of value from. For us, it might be of limited value because we're already kind of past it almost.
Okay, so we're ahead of the curve. Did I see another hand up here? Mayor Chop first, and then Councillor Van Passen.
Through the chair, if council would like to see it, for sure. Sorry, go ahead, Nicholas.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Loeb, yes.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mayor Chop. That was the comment I was making at the opening. Sorry, I should have also addressed that in addition to the sort of body text section about the smoking bylaw, that recommendation can now come out also. The issue when the report was drafted was that the smoking bylaw that was passed in February purported to regulate cannabis because of the expectation of the former Ontario government's regime around smoking in outdoor spaces. Once the new draft legislation came out on September 27th, it became apparent that municipalities would actually have no power because of the way Section 115 in the Municipal Act is very particularly worded up until last Thursday to only say the word tobacco. And then as of just this past Thursday, they've added the word cannabis. So all of that brings us full circle to the no smoking bylaw we passed in February now operates smoothly once again. So there were hiccups along the way, but now we've actually returned to the beginning. That's correct, Your Worship. And I should have mentioned that earlier when I made my opening remark on this, so I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Michelli first, then Van Passen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Vaughan, forgive me if I missed this when I was reading through this. I don't find any place where it says how many retail licenses we're going to be providing.
Through the chair, it's unknown at this time. They are not saying how many they're going to give out. There is no setback requirement from store to store presently. It's an unknown issue right now, unfortunately.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a second?
Sure.
So, Mr. Vaughan, it is entirely possible, depending on who applies for these licenses, we could have 2 locations on one street.
Through the chair, that's entirely possible.
Okay. And I'm just asking if I can ask another one. Mr. Vaughan, is it possible for you, when you draft this letter to the AGCO, to ask about that? And I guess just a supplemental question to that, is the possibility of this retailing being done through the LCBO entirely off the table now?
Through the chair, that's correct. So the way it'll work is the Ontario Cannabis Store will retain, for now, 100% online sales, and we are going to be moving into a private system for retail sales, like a storefront bricks and mortar type of retail sales. The online sales for now are being handled by the Ontario government. That may change once we get closer to April. I'm not sure. But also to address your question about the letter I'm going to be sending, the letter I'll be providing to the AGCO will only be in reference to the licenses that come up. So they have heard our comments in the past. We've attended countless forums with AGCO staff, and I have expressed our concerns from both a planning perspective and just general operation perspective. And they are forging ahead with their current regime. So when we do respond, it'll be in reference to a specific location.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Van Pass.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm getting a little confused, and that don't take much on most days, but